People around here trust the shepherds. Jamie, Adam, and the other Jamie. They always have. The sheep trust them too. Gather round. I'll throw another log on the fire and turn it up just a touch, cause another episode of the BHHcast is starting now.
In 2021, a podcast called The BHHcast chose to focus on true crime podcasts. Not all of the hosts successfully made it through the episode. This is an exploration of what happened. No, that's
crazy.
All right, we're doing a regular episode of the podcast, but we are true crime focused. Jamie Bendel, Jamie Hernan, Adam.
Here it comes. Give me some. Oh.
What happened to Adam's last name in this introduction of the podcast? This will be our focus on a true crime episode of the BHHcast. Lightning rounds only. More after this. All right, Sheep, welcome back. This is the BHHcast special true crime themed episode where we are talking to hosts of some notable and noteworthy true crime themed podcasts. Our guest this segment is the host of Murder Bucket, which is a true crime podcast. Hannah Palmer is the host. She typically murders, paranormal activity, abductions.
Got it.
Kidnapping.
Check. I'm not sure how the buckets plays in, but I think we can ask her.
How big is the bucket of murder?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Hannah,
welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so first, how big is this bucket of murder?
I would say it's a normal sized bucket. I don't do murder every single episode. I mean, like you said, I do paranormal activity, abductions, kidnappings, and weird stuff.
Cool.
What's the difference between a bucket and a pail?
Oh,
I guess it's where you live.
Don't know.
I like that.
Oh, I don't think it's
regionalism.
I don't think it's a pop soda thing.
Is it?
It could be.
Like, murder is murder, but are there areas of the country that just don't even get the concept of murder bucket?
No, wait a minute.
They're like, is she talking about a pail?
Stop. If she did something other than murder, it'd be a manslaughter pail. Murder goes in a bucket.
Yeah, murder always
Manslaughter
goes
in
in
a pail.
So a bucket is a higher level of container.
It's a crime.
Bucket is bigger.
Oh, clearly.
Yeah.
Buckets are usually bigger than
So
pails.
pails are the misdemeanors of containers.
I think we've come off track a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get back to Hannah.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Oh, Hannah.
Yeah, we
Hey.
do have a
Hi.
guest. Yeah.
We do get distracted sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. So, what was the genesis? What was your murder bucket origin story?
Quarantine.
There we
was
go.
bored. I needed something to do.
Okay.
I needed to keep myself occupied.
All right. What makes a good focus of your podcast for you?
As far as like episode topics or
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I really try and do really like lesser known crimes. I try and find like obscure things that have happened, things that really the media doesn't talk about that often. I really don't try and do like a lot of big known crimes. I have done a lot of them, but I try and kind of steer away from that.
Okay. So the lesser known but still pretty weird or interesting stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How many have you ever started one and you got a little further into it and you're like, not that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I've researched a few episodes where I've kind of written maybe like a page and then said, okay, well, I can't find anything else. This doesn't really have anything. And I can't just ramble for 25 minutes for no reason. So I'm going to find something else.
Ooh, I wonder if that's part of the cover up though on some of those. The big state cover up, the deep state cover up. That's why she can't find more on those topics.
watch
Maybe
the
those
story.
are the real juicy ones that just kind of dead end right away.
Cover on the bucket?
Yeah. Easy. Enough with that.
You just put a lid on the bucket.
That's right.
Oh.
See, she cleaned that up for you.
I know.
She cleaned it up nicely.
Okay.
She took your broken bit and she fixed it.
My job is not always, I'm trying to pass here sometimes. And Hannah took it and slammed it.
Yeah. If we knew volleyball terms, that would have been explained
Oh,
perfectly.
I completely set her up.
Yeah.
It would have been something. Who knows?
How far back are you going to go with your podcast, historic, as far as, or is there no holds barred with regard to how far back you're going to look?
No holds.
Okay, so we could have a George Washington, UFO sighting kind of thing or disappearance.
If I can find enough information, sure.
Excellent. Okay.
If it's only one article, then maybe not. But if I can find like 3, 4, 5 articles, then yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as far as paranormal activity goes, how much of that is, where do you come down on paranormal activity?
I've done a few episodes so far about paranormal activity. There was one at the beginning where it was really just a lot of like ghost stories in my area where I live, which is kind of middle of Maryland. And a friend let me borrow a book that was actually just a lot of paranormal activity in the area. So I covered a lot of topics in there. But right now I'm really not doing the paranormal side. I've kind of got a little series going on. It's called the Cold Case Road Trip. So it's probably like 29, 30 episodes, I believe, where I travel all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 5 of the inhabited territories. And every week I cover 2 of those places and find a cold case in 2 different locations, hoping one day that maybe somebody knows information about these and they can be solved.
Pop quiz to my co-host. What are the 5 inhabited territories?
The 5 inhabited territories.
Correct. And we'll do this back and forth. So name one, then the other.
Okay.
You may begin.
First inhabited territory is U.S. Virgin Islands.
We're going to rely on Hannah to judge this because I do not know the answer.
Yeah, maybe. Yes. I would say yes.
Yeah.
That is the most confident judge I've ever heard.
Is Guam an inhabited territory?
I don't know.
Yes, it is, because I've done Guam already.
Boom.
Are you answering this Jeopardy
you,
style
buddy.
or was
American Samoa.
Oh, well
Yes.
done.
Yes.
I'm going to say the U.S. Virgin Islands.
I said that.
Oh.
I started with that.
I'm going to say Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Rico, Porto.
that? It's tough now.
Try-
So
Trying
that's
to pull up
4.
my
So this is
document,
now
but-
the 5th. Marshall Island.
I believe that's the last one.
Okay, look at that.
Air horn.
Yeah, you thought we couldn't
Air
do
horn.
it. You thought we couldn't do
Air
it.
horn.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
There we go.
Your fake air horn is better than the real one.
I know. The real
How?
one sucks.
Let's just take a moment. Hernan set us up for failure.
I know. He thought he
And
had
he
us.
crushed it.
He's like, oh, watch how stupid I can
Rushed
make my
it.
other
Yeah.
podcast hosts look.
5
And yet
inhabited territories.
we took that, knocked it out of the park.
Look at that.
Yeah, I will admit you did, but also, Hannah, I'm the editor, so none of this will be in the final episode.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what this is going to become, Hannah? The cold case episode of 5
What
inhabited
happened?
territories.
What happened to the inhabited territories?
Yeah.
I
Segment.
interviewed Jamie, and
Yeah.
he was trying to cut.
Where'd they go?
People said there was a mystery. There's a missing from that podcast. It's only one original tape has
So
it.
let me ask you this: what turns a case cold? Who decides when it's become a cold case?
I would say more than likely the reason why it turns into a cold case is because either no evidence is found, or the killer or the person who maybe abducted that person hasn't been found, or I would also say the bodies haven't been found.
Have we used up too many bucket puns yet, so where I can't throw in an
we've
ice bucket
actually-
challenge?
No, we reached the limit, actually.
The ice
so,
bucket challenge?
Yeah.
Cold case, ice bucket.
No. So,
Okay.
These murder files have been in cold storage for the last 6 months. In my effort to help fight ALS, I'm dumping a bucket of
water.
cold cases. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's macabre and morbid.
really disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed of you.
Mm-hmm.
I just asked the question. You took it to the next level.
Yeah.
No, that
There you
was
go.
your intention.
So when you're looking in these so when you're in your road trip around the world or around the United
Around the world.
States,
Cold cases around the world.
Next season's around the world.
Next time.
Yeah. But how do you find them? Like how do you kind of how do you find these? You said you got 2 in every state. That's interesting to me that you'd be able to find those.
So I started off really just going to Google and typing in cold case Delaware, and first seeing what was coming up in just a regular Google search. But then I actually found a website that's called thecharlieproject.org. And it is like a nonprofit organization that's run, I believe it's just by a single person, where they have like thousands of cold cases listed by region and country. So I'll actually just go to that website most of the time, the first place I go, and find the state that I'm working in and try and look up any of the cold cases they have listed. There might be some that just have like a one line, this person disappeared on this day, nothing's ever been found. Or they have like 4 or 5 pages, which then that makes me think that there's actually more on Google that I could find on this person.
I think some states probably have their murder buckets overflowing. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean certain
Yeah,
states would, but
probably.
I imagine there's
My
some
bucket
states
runneth over.
they don't have many.
All right, so we do lightning round on this show where we ask rapid fire questions. They are deep questions, short answers.
Okay.
We're going to go practice round.
Great.
Very easy, just to familiarize you with it. And that practice question is clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
All right, starting with Jamie.
Name an item that you believe would be on Elon Musk's bucket list.
Riding a camel.
Would you rather have an amazing wardrobe or an amazing car?
An amazing car.
I feel like Elon Musk is going to listen to this, and he actually does want to ride a camel.
That's funny. I have no worries that Elon Musk will not be listening to this. It's not going to be a problem.
But he's already ridden a camel.
That's right.
I have a reasonable degree of certainty that Elon Musk employs someone who searches for references to Elon Musk.
So now we're going to be listened to.
Prints a transcript out and says, here are all the podcasts that you were mentioned on.
How did she know?
Elon, go ahead and tweet
I
us.
wanted to ride a camel.
All right. But I think the actual answer
It's
to that...
lightning round. Aren't we going to...
Well, he already broke it.
Okay, you already broke the lightning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Time out.
the answer is Elon Musk wants to ride a camel in space.
In space! All right, go ahead.
I'm in.
All right. Time in. What makes you dislike a person?
Their character.
Name an item that you believe would be on Jeff Goldblum's bucket list.
Sitting down with the president?
Do you have any superstitions?
No.
What do you think happens after death?
I believe our bodies possibly float into space, like our spirits. And then if you are a Christian or believe in some sort of God, then you go wherever that God is.
Okay.
All right.
Name an item that you believe would be on Snooki's bucket list.
Getting a bikini wax from another famous celebrity.
Ooh, absolutely.
Or a president.
Or a president.
You
No,
don't
you
get to
can't
answer.
On a
You don't
camel.
get to
You
answer
can't
this.
supplement answers.
You're
What goes on
ridiculous.
with you?
You're violating the lightning.
How did you know that was me? That could have been Hannah.
Hannah,
Wasn't Hannah.
what is your favorite scent?
I like the smell of fresh cut grass.
Okay.
That's a great one.
We're not asking you.
But I'm just telling you.
I know, but
If you can whisper murder bucket, I can whisper that's a great answer.
That was a great answer.
See? Was that me or Hannah? You'll never know.
go ahead, Murder Buckets. Let's hear it.
So has researching crimes made you more fearful or more confident?
More confident.
All right. That's our round. Do you want to go with the bonus
Do you have a
question?
bonus?
Yeah, I do have a bonus question.
Okay.
Of the states that you have investigated so far, which one do you now want to avoid altogether?
I would probably want to avoid Oklahoma, to be honest, because after doing more research on that one, it actually seems as though that area where those people disappeared and the fire broke out is now completely abandoned. So it seems a little creepy.
That seems really creepy.
It
Yeah,
does.
very
Yeah.
creepy.
And all the camels.
Stop with the
And
camels.
apparently
What
the
with
camel.
the camels?
I gotta have animal questions.
You're ridiculous.
Yeah. Why do you keep going back to camel though? Of all the you've become
So many
camel
animals.
I'm sorry,
fixated
okay.
on this episode.
And all the presidents.
So does it ever? So just talking about true crime as a podcast genre, do you feel like there's something? And I'm a fan of the genre, right? But
Okay.
it strikes me as something sad that there will always be new source material.
Oh, definitely. It's 100% sad. And I mean, now that I'm a parent, it makes me even more sad knowing that these things are still happening and that people's lives are being taken away and that it, like you said, it'll never go away. It's never going to get better because people are just going to keep doing this. But their stories need to be told in the form of the victims, not essentially the people that are doing the crimes.
I think that's right. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about while it is a sad thing that there's always material, it's a great thing, the idea that podcasting, that is, you're able to do and reach a lot of people, can shed light and maybe, to your point, bring forth somebody who knows something, someone who
Well, it just
heard
gives
of
you
someone.
So the newspaper isn't going to be always as in depth.
Right.
The local
Correct.
media sometimes can be focused on other things.
Sure.
And so it is really a way to almost have grassroots
Right.
crime solving
Yeah.
and keep focused on crimes that should be solved.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and reaching more and more people with those stories in the hope that someone has something. But the podcast called Murder Buckets. All our sheep, we encourage you. These are true crimes podcasts that we've enjoyed that we think you guys might want to check out.
Do you think that there would ever be a time when you could go to the Container Store and you'd be like, I'm looking for a murder-sized bucket? And they'd be like, right this way.
Right this way, sir.
Right this way.
This way.
We have
Right.
we have all sorts of murder buckets
Yeah.
available for you.
Are you dismembering, or are you going to go ahead and take the full body?
Is this like crime of passion bucket, or is this premeditated bucket? Like,
Okay.
Do you
what's
need it to
that?
be clear? Do you need it to be solid?
Right.
Do we need an opaque bucket?
How long
Yeah.
is this bucket going to have to hold the scent in? Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to reach out to the Container Store and just say,
see if we can get a
free,
sponsorship
free
now.
ad. You don't even have to pay us. We just want you to, some ad about your supply of buckets, and
they'll
we'll throw
love
it in. Don't worry. Don't
They'll
even
love
listen.
us.
Right?
Hannah, it's been a pleasure meeting you, Sheep. I hope you've enjoyed Hannah as much as we have. The podcast is Murder Buckets. It's available on all the podcasts. Apple, Spotify. Is that correct?
Yes. Apple, Spotify, Google, Anchor, anywhere you can listen, you can get it.
All right, guys. So check it out. It's very interesting. Hannah's on her tour
In the
across
midst
the
of a
country.
cold case road trip, so
Yep.
maybe coming soon to a cold case near you.
Find out what creepy stuff has happened in your state.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Hannah.
guys.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Hannah. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
So that was Hannah. It was a fun time meeting her. Her podcast is Murder Buckets. So we talked a lot about
Murder
pails.
bucket.
Yeah,
Single
excuse
bucket.
me. One
Single bucket of murder.
Right. Murder Bucket.
But that was the Murder Bucket podcast. Hannah Palmer is the host. More podcasts right after this. All right, Sheep, welcome back. This portion of the podcast, we have a very special guest for a lightning round focused, true crime themed episode of the podcast. Our guest is Catherine Sheffield. She is the host of A Few Bad Apples podcast that is oriented around cases of police brutality that have happened throughout the decades. Obviously, the implication is it only takes a few bad apples to spoil the bunch. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
So give me the overview. I was going to say the implication is a few bad apples can spoil the whole bunch. So it's not necessarily saying that police generally are bad, but there are within the ranks
Correct.
of the police some really egregious cases of brutality that have resulted in some horrible things for people.
So the premise of the show is not to be anti-police, but if anything, just to spark reform. A lot of departments, they don't really provide too much training, and a lot of times when these calls that we see on TV, they end up the way that they do because minimal training or a quick jump to judgment. And so I think that these cases highlight where the problems are at and really hopefully open people's eyes to where we can start with provoking some change.
So what makes a good example circumstance or a happening or a case for you for a good focus of the podcast?
I really try to go with a case where the officer had a long history of problems. A lot of times I can do some digging and see that in the past there were problems and then, nothing happened or very minimal, I guess, discipline. And then the officer is allowed to go back onto, serve the community and continue to go out on the streets, and then the problem escalates. So I try to look for a theme where the officer had some problems, it was overlooked, and then it escalated to where it was extremely violent or some, major death or a problem.
Do you think that there is a risk for police officers, given what they're exposed to on a day-to-day basis, to develop?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think now with the media, it's really, police are not highly looked upon anymore. They're looked at a lot of times as the enemy, and it's due to, I think, a lot has to do with the media and their portrayal of them in all the cases that have happened. We don't see a lot of positive stories. And so I try to end every episode with a positive police story just to show a little bit of balance that it's not all police officers and there are a lot risking their lives on the line.
All right, so we do lightning round. So this is like deep questions, quick answers.
Okay.
All right? So we're going to
Okay.
flow with that a little bit. We're going to have a practice question, okay?
Okay.
To kind of set it up. Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
All right. Clockwise, starting with the other Jamie.
Which TV cop would be most likely to join a police gang similar to what you described in your episodes on the LA County Sheriff's Department? Andy Sipowicz from NYPD Blue, Detective Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, James Crockett from Miami Vice, or Chase from Paw Patrol?
I have no experience really with any of those shows, so I'm going to go with Paw Patrol.
Correct answer.
When a police officer comes to my door and says he wants to ask me a few questions, what is the correct answer?
Go away.
Catherine, do you know why I pulled you over?
No.
Apple juice or apple cider?
Apple juice.
Reach for your taser or reach for your pepper spray?
Pepper spray.
As a child, with your parents, did you have anything in the way of Miranda rights?
No.
You didn't have the right to remain silent.
As a parent, is that what you're supposed to do when you're
Go ahead.
you're,
Go ahead.
you're
We're not judging. We're lightning
it took-
No one read me my rights. No.
Yeah,
Okay, there you
it took
go.
me a while to figure out that my younger brother was part of my family's deep state.
Oh,
He was constantly leaking bad information
narc.
to the authorities. Yeah.
Thank God my kids don't listen to this podcast,
right,
or else
right.
they'd be
lightning round.
asking
Keep
for
it going.
Miranda rights. All right. Who would you trust more to house sit if you were on vacation? Comedian Gallagher, Gilbert Gottfried, or Courtney Love?
I think Courtney Love would have a really good time at my house. So yeah, I would trust her.
I hope you're familiar with these references. Ponch, John, or Sheriff Taylor.
Okay, actually, I'm not familiar with.
Okay,
either
so
of them.
the two first officers from the TV show Chips,
Oh.
and then you have the Andy Griffith Show.
Okay. Oh, I love Andy Griffith. Sheriff.
Okay,
I wonder if we should have references from this century.
easy, big fella.
No, but I was a kid.
yeah,
Okay, so
she knew as soon as I said Chips.
one of my worst childhood bike injuries came from trying to emulate Ponch
Oh yeah,
on a
trying to emulate Ponch has injured a number of children our age.
There was an episode where there was some like stunt motorcyclist and he would slide off the back of his bike and hold on to just the seat as he went down the freeway.
Don't do it.
I tried to, and apparently it's not as easy as it looks on TV.
Last lightning question.
Last lightning round question. Over or under, how many episodes do you think your podcast will ultimately be?
It's 20 per season, so over.
All right.
Okay.
I like it.
Nice.
I like it.
That's
Excellent.
that's the ultimate optimism right
that's
there.
the ultimate. I'm going to take
No
the
matter
over.
what it is, it'll
I don't
be
care
more.
what number you say. I'm
More's
making
coming.
more.
Taking the over.
That's right. Good.
Yeah. So help me understand your development as a host. Was this, you had this idea, you got started, you realized there's ample source
Right.
material. Like, what's that
I'm
process
actually
been
a
like for you?
teacher by day. I teach high school English, and when COVID hit, I was just able to have a lot of time on my hands. And at that time, there was a lot going on in the news, so I just started researching. I have my dissertation. I mean, I have my doctoral degree, so I know how to research, and I just kind of applied it to this program, and here I am. So it really, I have no experience in podcasting other than I've been doing it for 1 year now.
So when you research this type of issues with law enforcement, do you think it's a newer problem? Do you think this is a historic problem that's been with us like since beginning of law enforcement, or is it a recent habit?
I think it's a long-rooted issue in this country. Yes.
It's interesting because I think probably technology has changed the availability of learning more things. So one of my kids yesterday brought up a news subject that they were conversant in because of TikTok. So where I might have watched the evening news or read the newspaper in the morning, they're being exposed to things in ways that we never would have before. And
Right.
the ability to record and publish something definitely tips the balance in favor of two sides of an event. What that historically has been in favor of the person writing the report.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, technology definitely has changed everything. I mean, since Rodney King when that was like the first video to ever go viral. And that was before everyone had a cell phone in hand. I mean, so over time it's changed so much and everyone has technology readily available on their pocket, you know? So, I mean, they can just pull it out and start recording and they can make news with whatever they want to submit.
So it's interesting. And again, I don't want because I think we could kind of delve pretty far into the subject matter, which is okay. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to kind of dig into that a little bit. But do you feel like what society's expectation of the police has changed over time? And I say that from the perspective of do most people think it's the role of a police officer on a scene to be all pieces of the judicial system rolled into one? They're determiners of criminality, they're assessors of guilt or innocence, and they are the person charged with carrying out a punishment.
I think that they do. I think the expectation is, I mean, I've heard in some cases where there is no like problem with the police, that people blame the police for the lack of evidence or the way that they collect the evidence. And, you know, so I think their expectation on police is high. But, you know, I think it all really boils down to the amount of training and how prepared are these people. But, you know, the problem is they are the first people first individuals that we call when there is a problem. So that is where where people put all the pressure on them because, you know, when there's a problem, we're going to call 911 and usually they're the ones to respond and take the report. So, I mean, I think that we should change our view and not put everything on them, but maybe a lot of people really do place high value on them being the all in the investigation and the way that it will plan out in court. Back
to your TikTok point, I can't get out of my head the idea of a Tom Brokaw TikTok dance video delivering the news. I feel like maybe there'd be more trust in the media if all newscasters delivered it while doing a dance video.
That would be something else.
Yeah, Tom Brokaw could definitely get away with that Apache bongo song. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Anyhow.
All right. Well, so I guess keeping on with the podcast. I'll take the over as well.
Yes.
Where can people find your podcast?
It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere really that you get your podcasts.
Do your students listen?
I actually haven't told them that I have a podcast.
That's good. Keep it on the down low.
I didn't want to mix business and pleasure.
Right.
Which one's the business and which one's the pleasure?
Don't answer that.
Don't answer that.
So that was a setup.
And podcast is pleasure, my side hobby.
And the name of the podcast is A Few Bad Apples. We encourage all the sheep to check it out. It's very interesting. It's a very timely topic in our society. And it's an interesting podcast.
I would have, if I was a student and I discovered my teacher's podcast,
yes,
and it was A Few Bad Apples,
yes,
I would simply bring in a bad apple and leave it on their desk.
Ooh, very cool.
And let them know that I'm a listener.
That's right. And that someone in the class knows.
Somebody knows.
Right? I know what you did last summer.
Somebody knows.
I know what you did over COVID.
I didn't think that they actually listen to podcasts these days, so I don't know what kids are doing. I think that they're just spending time doing TikTok and not really listening to true crime podcasts, but that could just be me and my assumption of them.
No, that's not true. They are knee-deep in podcast subscriptions.
They're coming for you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We appreciate it. Catherine Sheffield, host of A Few Bad Apples podcast. Check it out if you have an interest in hearing both positive examples and some real life examples of where things got sideways in police interactions.
Thanks a lot, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was A Few Bad Apples, a really interesting host. We've got a very exciting show for you, sheep. We're going to be hitting all stars of the true crime.
It's all true crime, all episode.
All day,
we're going to find out.
Day.
So it's where bodies are buried, where people have gone missing.
How to get away with murder.
I know there are no how-tos. So if you're listening here with crime in your heart, this is not the episode. And quite frankly, I don't ever want to find out that somebody committed a crime and they'll be like, Andy was a fan of the podcast. So
He learned how to do it from the
you
podcast.
You keep that a secret, Sheep. But we will be back with additional guests here in a special lightning round focused true crime edition here of the podcast.
Taka taka, don't go anywhere, sheep.
Podcast back from the break. This is a very special true crime focused lightning round only episode of the podcast. Jamie Bendel, Jamie Hernan, Adam Haig. We are joined this segment by the hosts of Open Shutters, a creepy podcast. Scary ghosts, creepy serial killers, all things that go bump in the night. Barry Marino, Philip Landry, Jennifer Lynn are the hosts. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you guys record this in New Orleans.
Yes, we do.
All right. And you maintain now what is the second most haunted city in America?
Well, it'd probably be Salem, Massachusetts, I would say, huh?
It could be
Good
Charleston.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter because
With
they're
all witch trials and everything.
but whatever city it is, it's a distant second to New Orleans.
Oh, everything's a distant second to New Orleans. You can't walk down the streets, even in the suburbs, without feeling some type of paranormal activity.
It's because of the river. The water
The
element
river
brings ghosts.
and all the death that has happened in history here. You know, we've had 2 wars on our soil. We had the yellow fever. Oh, and the most recent thing, Hurricane Katrina. And let's not forget the crime, people getting shot all the time.
Barry Marino is not from New Orleans. I can tell with the accent.
No, I think the accent is 100% New Orleans.
Where are you from, Barry?
It's 100. I used to live in Jersey. But
There we go. I hear a little bit of Jersey in there.
Our accent is much more similar to New Jersey than television would have you know.
Okay.
I believe that. I'm on board. And that's just not because New Orleans was also once the #1 New Jersey crime syndicate relocation city.
Right.
Interesting.
I'm Italian. You know, what can I say? I got that Italian kind of accent.
I'm not sure that what Barry just said is sanctioned by the New Orleans Visitors and Conventions Bureau.
What's that? About the death and the...
People getting shot left and right.
I used to be a tour guide. I was a ghost tour guide. We talk about the death all the time.
There's dead everywhere.
We have second lines where people party and cut up and have fun on the way back from the funeral.
Absolutely.
I think that's the greatest tradition ever.
Yeah.
Are we live?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
you're good.
I'm
Okay,
looking
so
for
we
a
got
second
to
line.
watch our language. We can't get too blue here,
You
right?
can go
You
as
can-
blue as
you
you
can-
like.
you can say what you
We
want.
got the big E tag all over our podcast, so...
So I can say whatever I fucking like, right?
That's right.
Exactly. That's right. All right. So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. What was the genesis of you guys coming together and starting Open Shutters?
Well, Jennifer's my cousin. Philip and I have been friends for about 5 years now. And I got into podcasts during the pandemic. I started listening to them. And I really like this one called Morbid, a true crime content. True crime podcast with Ashley and Elena. They're one of my favorites. So you can hear a lot of their influence in our show. And I said, I can do that. You can only binge watch Tiger King so many times.
Before you think, I need to get me some lions.
I gotta get me some
I
lions.
need to get me some lions.
Is there a point
Well,
at
actually,
which
Carol Baskin's if you ever listen to us, Carol Baskin's definitely one of our targets. Right.
Oh, excellent.
Anyway, I got Philip together. So, Philip, you'd like to do a podcast? And so I've always been a true crime buff. And I said, let's do true crime. And I said, what better thing to open it with but Madame LaLaurie? What do you think of that? You know, the woman that tortured her enslaved servants in her attic. She was played by Kathy Bates in American Horror Story.
We do here, as part of our podcast, an icebreaker, rapid fire, lightning round kind of questioning thing. Deep questions, quick answers. So we can either do this where all 3 of you answer each question, which is fine.
that's
or we
the
can
only way we can do it.
Oh, that's the only way we can do
Yes.
it? Okay, so each question is going to need 3 answers.
Okay, great.
We'll ask the question, all 3 of you answer.
We're going to do a practice question just to kind of get you warmed up, all right?
Okay.
Practice question. Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
Clockwise. Counterclockwise.
I was afraid of that.
Oh,
No, we got
right.
two clockwise. We're going to let the
It
majority
is
rule
clockwise.
there.
Okay.
All right, so clockwise, starting with Jamie.
All right. The worst sound for a morning alarm clock: fingernails on the chalkboard or a baby crying?
Oh, fingernails.
Fingernails. Fingernails.
Okay,
I have
unanimous.
2-inch fingernails, so fingernails.
Best creepy movie.
Oh, I have to say Orphan. That's a hard
I'm
one.
gonna pick from my childhood, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's funny now, but it's creepy when I was a child.
Ooh, interesting.
The original Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
I like that one.
Well played.
yes.
What is the name of your pirate ship?
Oh, whoa. Mine would be like Big Easy Barry.
Oh,
Go, Jennifer.
The Queen. For obvious reasons.
Mine's just called the Black Hole.
You guys are killing me.
Worst voice to wake up to on a hotel wake-up call: the character Janice from Friends or Jar Jar Binks?
Oh,
Jar Jar
Janice.
Binks.
Janice.
Oh,
Janice.
2 Jar Jar, 1 Janice.
Yeah, I'm the Janice.
Okay. Satanic worshiping, is it actual or is it just an excuse to kill people?
Actual.
Actual, definitely actual.
Actual.
Okay.
Could you find anyone in New Orleans who would not respond to that with the answer actual?
No, probably not.
all right. As a child, did you ever manage to pin one of your true crimes on a sibling?
Oh, God, yes.
All the time. I had 2 older brothers.
Only child.
I had 2 younger brothers. I did it all the time.
Do you know that when I was, my parents would tell you this story, not that you'd ever talk to my parents, but my parents tell the story of when I was an only child, I blamed an imaginary friend for scribbling on the wall. And they're like, who did this? And I was like, Sam and George. I had 2 imaginary friends named Sam and George
did.
And I was like, Sam and George did it.
Let's punish them.
Well,
Mom.
my brother used to blackmail us whenever we did anything.
Worst song to be played at a funeral: Highway to Hell by AC/DC or Another One Bites the Dust by Queen?
Oh, God, Highway to Hell, definitely.
I think both are appropriate songs to play.
A highway to hell.
You're home alone and you hear a noise or see something. What is the scariest noise or sight that you can think of that when you're home alone?
Oh,
I have a
howling,
cat, so there's
howling
always-
wolf.
Okay.
I guess my barking dogs.
We have one more?
Mm-hmm.
Howling Wolf
Yeah.
and Barking Dogs. What was the other one?
Philip, I think it's you.
Oh, me? Oh, no, I said I have a cat, so there's always noises happening.
So nothing scares you. Okay.
All right. Think back on the fashion trends that you personally have rocked. Of those, which
Shoulder pads in the
was
80s.
the craziest? All right, shoulder pads.
Okay.
Those parachute pants in the early 90s.
Please, hammer.
Oh.
Don't hurt him.
God, no.
I think back in the day it was that Alexis look. I had padded shoulders, big earrings, high heels, the whole Falcon Crest
Oh.
Dallas type look.
Interesting.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Very good.
Bonus question: I come to New Orleans. It's dusk. I want to go out and have a good time. Where am I going in New Orleans to meet up with some people that might someday be described on your podcast?
The Quarter, definitely. The French Quarter.
At any particular place?
What's it? Harry's Corner.
Harry's Corner.
Okay.
All right.
Super creepy.
Do I get a bonus round question?
You were welcome
I'd
to
say
one.
the Golden Lantern.
Oh, the Golden Lantern. That's kind of creepy.
Golden Lantern or Harry's.
You don't know
looking
what
for
you'll
creepy.
find.
Okay, good.
Barry, what's that bar in Bourbon Street that's mixed, gay and straight?
That could be any of them.
But I think mixing bars where you have gay people and straight people getting along, having.
You
at
might like
same
the
time.
Black Penny on Bourbon Street. I mean, Black
you're
Penny on
talking-
Rampart
Oh,
Street
yeah, okay. That.
is a good example. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a hipster place.
Hipsters are the scariest sort.
They can be creepy.
All right. Do you think? So is this my bonus round question?
It could be.
We don't know. We haven't heard it yet.
All right. Do you? Speaking of tourists, do you think ghosts can be tourists?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Sure.
Yes. Most likely it's going to be easier if they're attached to an object.
I agree, yes, but they're usually tethered to their place of death or tethered to their childhood home. So they're more tethered locally. But it's possible to travel. Why not? They're spirits.
Interesting.
All right, so I will acknowledge that I am not very ghost sophisticated.
No.
I guess to my knowledge of ghosts.
That's right.
So are you saying that ghosts tend to stay where the thing that happened to them happened?
Yes, usually they do, but they can attach to a person or an object and move along with them. Like there's a cemetery around the corner from my house, and Shirley Goodman, who sang Good Times Roll and Shame, 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 she's buried there. And one night we decided to be real creepsters and walk through that cemetery at midnight. And after that, her songs started playing in my house without on the phone, on the TV, everything, without even coming from an app or anything. They just start playing.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. True story.
Bonus question.
Hey,
do the blue bottle sculptures actually work to either trap or ward off spirits?
Yes. Really, they do.
Yes. No, I know people that actually do use that, practitioners. Yes.
Okay.
So tell people where they can find your podcast.
We can be found on Spotify, Apple, Breaker, Google, Anchor, which is where we record from Anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also our one and only sponsor. And pretty much anywhere you find the podcast.
All right. So if you are a fan or listener of true crime podcasts and you like something that is thematic by month, sometimes by subject matter.
And always a little creepy.
Always a little creepy. We have sheep. They have creeps.
Yep.
Fans of the podcast, check out Open Shutters, a creepy podcast. Appreciate Barry, Jennifer, and Philip joining us for this episode. Thanks, guys, for being a part of the podcast.
Enjoy the view from the Open Shutters.
Thank you. You're quite welcome.
We'll see you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I have a good day.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, that was the hosts of Open Shutters, a creepy podcast. I think I could see myself going to New Orleans and calling up Barry and being like, all right, let's do this.
Let's just get creepy. All right, sheep, check them out if you want creepy.
We're going to be back with more of the podcast right after this. Welcome back to the podcast. This is a very special episode of the podcast. We are true crime focused this episode. We are doing lightning rounds with some of the hosts of the more interesting and noteworthy true crime podcasts that you can find when you're not listening to the podcast. This segment, we have with us the host of the podcast Final Days on Earth, Claire St. Amant. Season 1 focused on the life and death of Damien Hurd. And Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
All right, so you are a little different, perhaps, than some people who begin podcasts in that you have a background as an investigative journalist and producer, right?
Correct. Yes, I've been with CBS News 48 Hours since 2014. And so I do investigative crime producing for them for their Saturday night show. And, you know, this was one of those cases that didn't fit in the 48 Hours formula. And it would just stayed in my file as a really interesting case and one that I always thought would make a great story, but it wasn't going to be a 48 Hours episode. And so it surprised me as much as anyone that it became a podcast, but I'm glad that that's where it ended up.
Which format do you like better?
So, I mean, that's like picking a favorite child. It's very difficult for me, but I'm leaning towards the podcast at the moment.
All right, so you had a lot of source material to work with here for your season 1, right?
I did, yes. I had a 187-page police report, and I had 47 witness interviews that the Gunnison Police Department did and released to me. Some of those were video and audio, and some were just audio, and some were just written reports on their conversation.
Are you ever struck by maybe what ultimately turns out to be how tenuous life is?
Definitely. One of the things that I say since I've had this job is that I'm grateful for every day that doesn't end in disaster.
Do you think that there's something about the true crime genre that makes it so popular with people?
You know, I think that death is always going to be fascinating to people. In the idea of a life being taken, prematurely, violently, unexpectedly, I think is something at our core that we all fear. So it appeals to, just our human nature and the idea that, everyone dies, no one lives forever, and how people die, matters and it affects people. And so it's something that, I think it's a tale as old as time. There's always been, as long as there have been people around, there have been murders. So it definitely is a large genre to be in.
When you think about the difference between the television versus the podcast, what are stories that are going to be better in the podcast format than in the TV format? So, for example, the one that you're doing right now, why was it not a great candidate for the TV?
Yeah, so the one I'm doing right now is just way too complicated for television. Like even the best true crime television show, which of course I'm going to say is 48 hours, it has an hour-long episode on one case. And with commercial breaks, we get about 42 minutes. And that sounds like a lot of time, but my podcast is like 7 hours.
Right.
Right. And so in 42 minutes, you can't really tell a very complicated story.
A lot of the podcasts that we've been, or the true crime podcasters that we've been talking to, do different crimes every episode, or sometimes they take 2 episodes on a single crime. You're taking a different approach where you're doing a single issue or a single crime and following it for multiple episodes because of the depth and the in-depth of the information. Through your podcasting, are you coming across other crimes that you are interested in that you're saying, okay, we're going to have that for season 2, we're going to have that for season 3, and because these guys, other people just feast on it. They take, that's our next episode. You're committing months and months to a single crime.
No, but I think that goes back to the idea of if something. So in your process, is there a hierarchy that says pitch first for television rejected, is it podcast candidate? Or are there things where you're like, I'm going to save this because I'm working on this different, like what's that development process like for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it's something that I'm still figuring out. I started at 48 Hours 7 years ago, and I just started the podcast in April. So I haven't had to really deal with that tension before. But, to me, I see them as pretty different types of stories, So, my first loyalty would have to be to my full-time employer, CBS News.
Right.
So I can't, take stories from them to keep in my podcast. But really, I see them as different types of stories. So I don't, like Final Days on Earth, the franchise that I created, is about unresolved crimes, where someone in the case, intimately involved with it, believes that justice was not served. Mm-hmm. And so in this season, it's Damien's father who says, I'm not convinced that my son committed suicide. I feel like he was murdered. I feel like there was foul play. Now, there's obviously a completely different opinion to have about that case. And that's the case, the opinion that the Gunnison Police Department has, that it's a suicide and that it's closed. So that, disagreement is really what makes the podcast work, because it's not clear cut. I don't believe that there's, one right, flashing red light answer to this case yet. And I hope that we get to a point where we feel like we have enough evidence one way or the other to actually say, this is what happened to Damien Hurd, and to say if it was, foul play or if it was suicide like the police believe. And, I think that's a cause that anybody should get behind. If truth is the goal, there's really nothing to be afraid of. So that's what I see. In my next season, I will have a second season that'll come out in 2023. And I'm looking at a case pretty strongly, an unsolved murder case in Texas that I think I'm going to do. I'm really, really feeling that one right now, but I'm not going to give away any names or details because it's not official.
Do you feel like this tension between sort of what the official story is and what a personal belief might be, where there's tension between those two things? Do you feel that just generally in life that having resolution is what's important? In other words, the outcome doesn't change, right? the person is still dead.
Right.
But is it this sense of accountability changes? Is it like what drives the tension?
To me, it's just about answering questions. I want to ask every question and I want to get as many answers as possible. And so, I like to live in the gray area of crimes. I like to look at crimes that don't have easy answers. And so for me, the tension of finding out what happened, I think in a lot of ways, for the stories I'm looking at, it's going to be subjective. Yes, we know someone is dead. Now, how they died, why they died, and when they died, I'm open to people reaching their own conclusions about that, me included.
How do you balance not being perceived by the family of the victim as an advocate versus being a storyteller, the journalistic approach to the story?
Yes, that is definitely one of the biggest challenges of what I'm doing. And I feel like every single time I talk to Damien's dad, I make a point of saying, I have to go down every road. I have to look at every possibility, or else I wouldn't be doing my job. And, I wouldn't have done the podcast if I didn't think there was a possibility that there was foul play. I absolutely believe that is one of the possibilities, but I'm not the one, planting my flag and saying this is murder. I won't do that. And just like I won't plan it and say this is suicide. I want to say these are all the different things that we know that happened. This is the timeline. These are the witnesses. These are the statements. This is the evidence. And I want to hear, different perspectives and feel like I've listened to everyone. And, I hope at the end of the day that even I come to a conclusion, but I'm one of those, gray area people. I'm okay if I don't feel like I 100% know what happened, as long as I've explored all the options, then I'll be satisfied.
All right, so let's transition into something that we do here on our podcast, and of course, we encourage people to become listeners of and fans of Final Days on Earth. So we do lightning round. So lightning round is deep questions, short answers. We're going to do a practice one. All right.
Okay.
All right. First, lightning round practice question is clockwise or counterclockwise?
Oh, clockwise all the way.
Clockwise all the way. All right. So starting with Jamie.
Claire, you find out that you are in your final days on Earth, but you can reverse your course of fate and not be doomed. But that would mean that Australia was subjected to a zombie apocalypse that was contained to the continent. What do you do?
Oh, man, I think I'd fall on my sword. I'd take my final days on Earth.
Claire's so brave. I like her. Which activity would you like to get a lesson from an expert in?
Any activity? I'm supposed to give you the activity?
No, you just find, you can learn from an expert. What's the activity you want to learn?
Oh, man. Maybe surfing?
Cool.
What has taken up too much of your life?
Expense reports.
You find out that you are in your final days on Earth.
Oh, Jesus.
Do you return your overdue library books?
No.
Which mystery or unsolved case would you most like to know the truth about?
Oh, man, that's an excellent question. Gosh, I've got so many. I know.
Adam got an excellent question. Thank you. Thank you, sheep. Go ahead, stop dancing in the pasture. Everybody else always gets the excellent questions. I got an excellent question. Good night. No, go ahead. Sorry, Claire.
When I was a kid, I grew up in a religious home, and I remember they said, what would you ask God when you got to heaven? And I said, did OJ do it? So maybe I'll stick with that.
Okay.
Nice.
The juice.
I like it. What's the biggest financial mistake you've made?
Ooh. I'm pretty thrifty, so I don't have a huge one. Probably buying too expensive running shoes.
Okay.
You find out that you're in your final days on Earth.
Oh, my goodness.
And you can get a tattoo that will be free and it'll be painless. And probably no one will ever see it, so it's just for you. What do you get tattooed?
I'm pretty proudly uninked. I don't think I would get a tattoo.
Fair enough.
If you could spend Saturday morning watching any cartoon, what would it be?
I always liked Doug.
Okay, Doug it is.
Doug it is. What's something that people are afraid of, but you are not?
Gosh, I don't know. You stumped me.
Tattoos?
Spiders?
Doesn't
Snakes?
sound like she's afraid of tattoos. She just chooses not to do tattoos.
She's not scared of them.
Would
I don't know.
Would you like an alternate question?
I would like an alternate.
She's going with the alternate.
Alternate
Jamie.
question. Backup question. What's something that scares you on a daily basis?
Sneezing while driving.
Very dangerous.
Excellent. See, the backup question worked.
High speed
great.
sneezing is a killer.
So, Claire, thank you for joining us. Where do people find your podcast?
So you can find it on any podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast One. You can always go to finaldaysonearth.com to get the latest
Killer
info.
website, by the way.
Thank you.
So, Sheep, we encourage you to check out the Final Days on Earth. Claire, we've learned a little bit something about your host, so you now know the host pretty well from her answers to our lightning questions. So you can feel like you know the host as you go ahead and listen to this interesting story. And next season, she's got another one coming.
All right, we appreciate it, Claire. Final Days on Earth podcast. Check it out wherever you prefer to subscribe to your favorite podcast. Claire St. Amant, continued success. We wish you the best of luck, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks so much.
All right, so that was Claire St. Amant. All right, so that is going to do it for the this segment of the podcast, Final Days on Earth. Do check it out. It's a very interesting story. It is extremely well produced. I encourage you very much to check out the true crime podcast, Final Days on Earth, hosted by Claire St. Amant. The BHHcast will return right after this. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the BHHcast. We do appreciate you listening to the BHHcast, and we know that you guys are fans of what we do, and so we appreciate that. We are one of America's premier lifestyle-oriented podcasts.
Right.
And while we have focused occasionally on a single alternate genre, like tonight, true crime, we do hope that you maybe check some of those podcasts out and give some consideration into which ways you might be able to help bring some resolution, particularly those that focus on cold cases, because, you know, they always say, see something, say something.
They do indeed. And now you kind of know the hosts as you listen to those podcasts.
Yeah, so do follow them on their socials, become subscribers to the podcasts. Don't wander too far away from the flock where you started.
There's wolves in those hills.
We keep you safe.
We're the shepherds.
We do not want you to be the subject of a true crime podcast.
Sheep, be safe out there.
All right, so check all the podcasts out that were a focus of it this evening.
Taka sheep.
Fire is getting low. This episode of the BHHcast is over. Time to go home now, sheep. Go on, back to where you came from. We'll call you back when it's time for another BHHcast. Taka.